Welcome back to the second podcast dealing with the Constitution. The first one, unveiling the Constitution and the Declaration. In this one today, we're going to continue that, going more depth into the Constitution and deal with American Indians, Moors, and Native American Indians, two separate ones. First thing we're going to start is dealing with going into the Constitution and dealing with the fact that where it says we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, secure the blessing of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Now, I want to go down to where it says here, apportionment and representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union, according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding the whole number of free persons. First, free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. Now, it's always been said that the so-called black people are 3/5. Are 3/5, and it doesn't say black people nowhere. It just says 3/5 of all other persons. Now, in that regard, let's pull that up. The 3/5, all other persons, the Indians not taxed, those bound to service for a term of years, and it says, including those bound to service for a term of years, excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 all other persons. Now, remember from the last podcast where we talked about the preamble, that the Moors wrote the preamble, and it tells you that in the preamble where it says the Moors are the original people pursuant to various scholarship information and various aspects of law. The free persons are the American Indian and Autochthon Moors, who are the free persons, who are of the United States. And those bound to service for a term of years are all the white persons, who are the indentured servants, or Caucasian, or Anglo-Saxons. They are the original slaves by federal law, and I'm going to show you all that in a few. They were meeting in 1862 to do away with African descent slavery, and Senator Cradlebaugh came in to put a bill in to have Anglo-Saxon white slavery included with the African descent slavery to be terminated. But the Senate and the chairman, with the purpose of them being there, he said, we should have some consideration for these white persons where white slavery is worse than African descent slavery, especially in the district or Washington, D.C., or the District of Columbia. The gavel hit. They said, no, you are too late to enter that bill. We've already voted. We've already proceeded to do away with African descent slavery. So he continued to speak. And then he said, well, if you give me time, I can put a bill together to include with the African descent slavery, white persons to be included, to be terminated as well, especially in the territories. The gavel hit again. He said, the gentleman's out of time. It's too late. They denied his request, and they continued on to proceed and have African descent slavery terminated and leave in place indentured servitude to the Anglo-Saxon Caucasians. I'm going to show you that. Also, I'm going to show you that where it says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect, that phrase, more perfect, does not mean to add to something that's perfect. It means the word more is the old French, Italian, and Spanish spelling for M-O-O-R. So M-O-R-E is the old French, Italian, and Spanish spelling for M-O-O-R. So when you read it, it says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. Then it goes into saying, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. And I'm also going to show you in here where it says that Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution, they were talking about privileges and immunities, who already had them and who's now entitled to get them. And that's in relation to the United States and the United States of America. And I'm also going to show you that where it says here in direct taxes, where it says here, direct taxes may be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union, according to the respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, excluding Indians not taxed, and 3/5 all other persons. I'm going to explain who all those different beings are and show you the documentation in relation. This book here, Immigrants in Bondage, is the complete book of immigrants. And in this book, it shows that the people in bondage were all white people. In other words, what I'm saying, this book, The Complete Book of Immigrants in Bondage from 1614 to 1775 by Peter Wilson Colham, every name in this book are all white people. They are not any other race of people, only white people. Every single person in this book. For example, here, you see the names of the book, names of the people in the book, where it has codes and scales that you have to look at to understand who is who. Robert Mercer, LC, is meaning landing certificate from Forward, Rappahannock, May 1728, and the X stands for Stray Records. These are all the people that were on the ships that came from Europe to America as slaves, indentured servants, who are the ones that are bound to service for a term of years. This is the book itself, and look how thick it is. And all it shows you is all the names of the being, of the people. Now, let's see if I do it this way. All the names of people, what ship they were on, where they were going. The whole book is in alphabetical order with thousands of names from 1600 to 1775, almost 100 years. And actually, this particular book starts from 1614 to 1775. Now, there's another book that he has with names and ships that they were on. It starts from 1400 to 1699. That's another book similar to that one. And everybody in that book are all white, Caucasian, Anglo-Saxon. Now, also, you see all the names. Elizabeth Merchant. S stands for sentenced to transportation. Elizabeth Merchant, she was sentenced to transportation, and T, she was transported January 1767 from Trial, which was over in Europe, and M stands for Middlesex. That's where that's what hurts her. There's another one. Let's see. Joseph Merchant, aged about 30, fair complexion, light brown hair, 5 feet 2 inches tall, from Balderton, sentenced for killing sheep at Balderton, and R stands for reprieved for transportation. Instead of going to jail, he was put on a ship and sent to America. From Lent, TB stands for transportation bond. He had a transportation bond, April 1773. And T is Nottinghamshire. That's where he's coming from, Nottinghamshire. So all of these people were the ones who were white slaves coming to America. Now, I'm going to show you this other one where it talks about who the indentured how Congress dealt with this. This is it here. (1862), the Congressional Globe, and I'm going to show you the first page of what it looks like. The Congressional Globe, the debates and proceedings, second session, 37th Congress. All right. This was 1862. page 1643 in the Congressional Globe. Before the Congressional Record was created, it was called the Congressional Globe, and then at the turn of the century, they changed to the Congressional Record. Now here we start. It says, here it starts out, it took a vote. It says, the nays, and these are all the Senate, all the people that voted no, and these are all the yays. It says 56-73. That was for, that says, so the amendment was not agreed to. The amendment, because they were trying to amend this to add the Anglo-Saxons to dismissal of African descent. So I'm going to start here. Mr. Stevens moved that the rules be suspended and that the House resolve itself into committee of the whole on the state of the Union. The motion was agreed to, so the rules were suspended and the House accordingly resolved itself into the committee of the whole on the state of the Union. Mr. Dawes is in the chair and resumed the consideration of Senate Bill 108 for the release of certain persons held to service or labor in the District of Columbia. Mr. Cradlebaugh, he's speaking. Mr. Chairman, I regret very much that the House has concluded to close debate upon the pending bill in 1 minute after I have obtained the floor for the first time since I have held a seat here. My great regret grows out of the fact, not that what I might say would be in opposition to the bill, as it is presented here before the committee, but because in my view, it is not perfect and complete. It does not cover the subject matter that it was intended to meet. I cannot see why, and then bam, 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 here the hammer fell amidst much laughter, the 1 minute allowed to debate having expired. The clerk proceeded to read the bill by sections for amendment. Mr. Cradlebaugh, I move to amend the first section so as to make it apply to persons of Anglo-Saxon race and to extend it to the territories. The bill now before the committee does not cover the entire subject matter which it should cover. If I understand it, it applies only to persons of African descent in the District of Columbia. I think we ought to have some little consideration and regard for those white persons who are enslaved. And I think that our sympathy ought not to be confined to the District of Columbia. I think that while we have territories in the Union where white slavery exists, we should not restrict the operation of this bill to the District of Columbia. Now remember, this was 1862, 1 year into the Civil War had started, a year before. So there was 1 year into the Civil War, and they were discussing this, doing away with African descent slavery, and he's trying to get them to include white slavery, which was spread throughout the country and in the district. So Mr. Stevens, Mr. Chairman, I cannot very well learn what is going on. I understand that the gentleman's amendment refers to the territory. So if so, I make the point of order that it is not germane to the bill relative to District of Columbia. The chairman, he says, the point of order comes too late. The gentleman should have made it before. Then Mr. Stevens, I could not hear what it was, the chairman. The chair regrets that exceedingly. Then Mr. Cradlebaugh continues, all I ask is to have time allowed me to show to this House a system of white slavery to which the system of African slavery in the District of Columbia bears no comparison, which white slavery was worse. I think thus, if there be anywhere in this republic slaves kept who have Anglo-Saxon blood in their veins, we should show some sympathy and regard for them and not confine all our sympathy to persons of African descent. If therefore I can have time to give me bam, 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 here the hammer fell. Then Mr. Lovejoy says, I wish to say in the way of opposition to the amendment of the gentleman that it is not timely and appropriate. There will probably be a bill brought before the House to strangle this other twin relic to which the gentleman refers. But that is not the point now before the House. I therefore oppose the amendment, and then Mr. Craterbar's amendment was rejected. Because what he was wanting to do was to add Caucasians, white people, to be no longer slaves attached with the bill to do away with African descent slavery. And he wanted to include the Anglo-white persons to be allowed to not be indentured servants because they were slaves. And he wanted them to no longer be slaves, so he wanted them to be released. Now, he wanted them to be released because this bill right here this definition of white persons in the law dictionary, the 5th edition Black's Law Dictionary. And it says white persons in the use in the revised statutes, United States, 2169 Naturalization Act, back of March 1790. Then some more statutes. Then it says members of the white or Caucasian race, as distinct from the black, red, yellow, and brown races. In the legislation of the slave period, persons without admixture of colored blood, whatever the actual complexion might be. Well, what does that mean? It means that there are two, I said this you look at my other podcast clip. There are two types of Caucasians. There is a dark Caucasian and there is a white Caucasian. The dark Caucasian are the people of India. The white Caucasian are the ones of Europe. The white persons, and it tells you right here that these white persons are separate from the black, red, yellow, and brown races, and they are in the legislation of the slave period. Well, what was going on during the slave period? Slavery. Well, what is legislation? Writing of laws. So they were writing laws during the slave period for white persons, white people. White people by the United States of America Congress wrote laws for white people to be slaves, not so-called black people. There are no laws federally written for black people, that so-called black people, to be made slaves. Now, where you've heard of the slave codes and the black codes after the Civil War ended, and then the Jim Crow laws, those three. All three of those are state provisional codes. They come from the states. They were codes written by the states outside the state constitution. But the white persons are in the Constitution. So these white persons are the indentured servant. Where it says, remember in the earlier in article over here in article 1 here, where it says go back to it. Oh, here it is. Where it says Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states which may be included within this union, according to the respective numbers, which shall be by determining and by adding the whole number of free persons. Free persons are the American Indian Moors, who are the indigenous people of America, comma, including those bound to service for a term of years. These are the white persons in the book Immigrants in Bondage that I just showed you, who are the white persons, who are the indentured servants that Congress, in the legislation of the slave period, laws were written for these white persons to be indentured servants. Then in 1862, that first year into the Civil War, Congress got together to vote to do away with African descent slavery. But Congress voted only for that, and Mr. Cradobar and others wanted to include Anglo-Saxon white persons who were slaves throughout the country, especially in D.C., and said that white slavery is worse than African descent slavery. And they shot it down. The Congress hit the gavel, said you're out of time. It's too late. You cannot amend the bill. The bill's already been passed. So his amendment was not put forward. Those are the people, including those bound to service for a term of years, which means that today, from 1862 to today, white people have never been released from their indentured servitude. They are still slaves. And this is what is happening with these militia groups and sovereign groups, citizen groups that are saying, we're slaves. They found out they're slaves and they're fighting back. They got the guns and all these different things. They're training up in the woods and all they've not just found out. It's been some periods of time, at least since the 1950s and 60s, until today. They found out that they're slaves, and they've always been slaves. They were never, Congress wrote legislation to make them slaves. And in 1862, when they released this African slaves, African descent slaves, who are the American Indian Moors, from slavery under the slave codes and the black codes that came after the Civil War, they wanted to, Mr. Senator Cradobar wanted to put Anglo-Saxon white persons in there to be terminated as well, and Congress said no. So these Caucasians, white people, are still slaves today. Now, I need to show you something else. Where the definition free white person, what that is saying, and what that has said all the time within the Constitution. Okay. It says, free white persons. The definition in the 4th edition Black's Law, free white persons, referred to in the Naturalization Act. And then it says persons belong to European races, then commonly as white, counted as white, and their descendants. And it says it includes all European Jews, more or less intermixed with peoples of Celtic, Scandinavian, Teutonic, Iberian, Latin, Greek, and Slavic descent. It includes Magyars, Lapps, Finns, and the Basques and Albanians. It includes the mixed Latin, Celtic Iberian, Moorish inhabitants of Spain and Portugal, the mixed Greek, the mixed Latin, Phoenician, the mixed and the North African inhabitants of Sicily, and the mixed Slav and Tartar inhabitants of South Russia. It does not mean Caucasian race. And the reason why it doesn't mean Caucasian race to be a free white person, because the white person is the slave. Congress never passed a law to today to release Caucasians, the Anglo-Saxons, from their indenture as a slave who came here 1400s to 1775, verified by the book Manifest, Immigrants in Bondage by Peter Wilson Colton. I just showed you. So white people have always been the slaves. Now, this thing about so-called black people being slaves, how did that happen? How did so-called black people become slaves? All these ships, it's like Brother Dane Calloway said. It's a lie. They made it up. We didn't come from Africa. Some people that were brought from Africa on ships were not brought on slave ships. They were brought on commerce ships, labor ships. That's why they had to sneak them onto the ships to take them to the plantations in the South. If you saw the movie 12 Years a Slave, what you will have witnessed is how they were stealing us to take us and put us in slavery. He was living in Maryland, a free man. Slave catchers paid by the plantation owners sent them up to the north, Philadelphia, New York, Detroit, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland. Find some so-called American Indian Moor, women, children, and men, steal them, just like in the movie 12 Years a Slave. They got them drunk, or they just kidnapped them, took them and put them in the basement of a building, in somebody's apartment until the evening, snuck them out of the apartment with their head covered and hands bowed and their mouth bound, snuck them off to the port, put them on a cargo ship. That cargo ship went down the south coast or the east coast down south to Mississippi, South Carolina, Arkansas, and unloaded them and snuck them into the plantations, and they became slaves, just like in the movie 12 Years a Slave, just like in the movie Antebellum. And Antebellum was a modern movie. Now, there's a book that completely talks about that. It's called The New York Kidnapping Club. The New York Kidnapping Club. We'll pull up. By Jonathan Daniel Wells. I'll show you the book. This is the book, The Kidnapping Club, Wall Street. Kidnapping Club, Wall Street, Slavery, and the Resistance on the Eve of the Civil War. The Kidnapping Club, this book goes into explicit detail about how they stole us off the streets in the various cities in the North. And they didn't just do a couple of hundred people, they did thousands for years. And if you remember in 12 Years a Slave, if you saw it, the guy that I can't say how you say it, cheat with Wooly, he was a prominent business owner. He had a business relationship with a white business owner. He was well known in the community. And when he got captured and came to and found himself way down in Mississippi being a slave, he was talking to the white guy that was building a shed. And they were talking. He said, "You're not like everybody else." He said, "Because I'm a free man. I'm not from here, this, that, and the other. If you could," he gave him the name. He said, "I can verify." He can verify who I am. He can verify what I am and how I got what I know. And I said, "I'll tell you things about him that only he would know." So the white guy actually went and checked, got in touch with the man, told the man that he was down in Mississippi on a plantation. Then the man came down there with the sheriff, with his name, with his business, with his papers and his business papers with him, and told him, "He's not a slave. He's my business partner, and you got to release him." And all the papers were legit. He had got it signed by a judge, came down there and got him. That's how he got free. This book goes into all of that. This is where that stuff comes from. These are all factual information. This is how they put us in slavery. And they wrote certain codes, laws to put us in slavery, to make us slaves, to take us away from our government. And it just was over time. This is how they did it. Now, the other part is, I want to show you. Now here, this is in the Constitution. It says, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect." Now, I just went over that. Now, more perfect, in this book here, "Nature Knows No Color Line" by J.A. Rogers. And this person on the book, by the way, is the Moorish Queen Charlotte of Charlotte, North Carolina. And in this book, it says that is to say, this is page 72 in this book. It says, "That's to say, this became the general pronunciation given to the word. The original root seems likelier to have been MOR, as seen in Cornish, Armorican, and other languages. Jameson, in his Scottish dictionary, says of the word morave, defined by him as black, swarthy, resembling a Moor. This word has certainly been used in Old English, as Cotgrave gives it as the sense of French more, M-O-R-E. So that word M-O-R-E in the preamble is the French spelling for M-O-O-R. Verified also this book here by J.A. Rogers, Nature Knows No Color Line, page 72. Now in this book here, Ancient and Modern Britain, there's 2 volumes. This is volume 1, Ancient. It's Ancient and Modern Britain is the title of this book. It's by David McRitchie. Page 49. He says in that book that page 73, in this book, that any Latin dictionary, an old one, no, I got the books mixed up. This book here is this book. This book here, Ancient Nature Knows No Color Line, by J.E. Rogers, is this definition here. And it says, any Latin dictionary, any old one, at least will tell you that the Morus is a Moor, a Blackamoor, or a Tawny Moor. The Roman Morus occurs in the European languages as Moor, M-O-O-R, Moor, M-O-R-E, M-O-R, M-O-H-R, M-O-R-O, Morean, Morean, and scores of other forms. For instance, the Italian dictionary says Moro, Uomo Nero di Ethiopia, means the black man of Ethiopia. The Century Dictionary says Moor means blackamoor. Then down here it says Moor, where it's highlighted, Moor for Negro continued to be in general use in England until at least the 18th century. Nathaniel Bailey, compiler of the first English dictionary, 1736, has M-O-O-R, meaning and spelled M-O-R-E, which is the French. And then M-O-R-E is the Italian and Spanish. So M-O-R-E in French, Italian, and Spanish is M-O-O-R. Or Blackamoor, native Mauritanian, Dr. Samuel Johnson, 1755. Now, so the word M-O-R-E is the French, Italian, Spanish spelling for M-O-O-R. In this book here, Nature Knows No Color Line, by J.A. Rogers, page 73. In this book, again, go back to it, Ancient and Modern Britain, by David McRitchie, volume 1, says that Jameson, in his Scottish dictionary, says of the word morave, defined by him as black, swarthy, resembling a Moor. This word has certainly been used in Old English, as Cotgrave gives it, as the sense of French, M-O-R-E, for M-O-O-R. The French spelling is M-O-R-E for the word M-O-O-R. So now we have 2 forms of scholarship that verify the word M-O-R-E is the French and Italian and Spanish spelling for M-O-O-R. This book here, Nature Knows No Color Line, page 73. Page 49, Ancient and Modern Britain, says Moor, M-O-R-E is the French. And then there's one more book. See if I can find it. right, that's not it. Okay, that's not it. Etymology. Let's see if we see this. Okay. In this book here, Dictionary of Etymology, Origins of American English Words by Robert K. Barnhart. Okay. By Robert K. Barnhart. It's an etymology dictionary. And it says, let's see. It says more before 1393, more, M-O-R-E, borrowed from the Old French, M-O-R-E. Later, more directly from the medieval Latin, moros, from Latin morus, Greek moros, inhabitant of Mauritania, an ancient country in North Africa. From the Middle Ages through the 1600s, Moors were commonly supposed to be black and very dark in color, and hence the word is often found as a substitute for Negro. So there you have it. The word Moor is spelled before 1393 until now, or then, which is in the Constitution or the preamble, is spelled M-O-R-E, which is the Old French. All right. So what we have is in the preamble. We'll go back to that. Constitution of the United States. Says, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves, the Moors of the United States, who are the people with all 500 plus American, Indian, Moor tribes and nations in America. Secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So in the preamble, M-O-R-E means the Moors, who are the American Indian. When I say Moors, I am not, under no circumstances, talking about any of the Moorish organizations that are out here. None of that. None of that. The Moors are by culture. And those of you that know about Noble Drew Ali, if you remember, Noble Drew Ali went to Egypt, studied with in the Adept Chamber in Egypt for some years, came back to America. This was 1920, early 1920s, late 19 in the teens. came back to America, and he lived with a Cherokee nation, tribe, because the Moors and the Indians are the same people, which you got two, though. The American Indian, Moor, not the Native American Indian. The Native American Indian was established by the Department of Interior in 1868, where they sent out an edict to say white people who were the slaves and are still slaves can say that they're Native Americans and join the status as on the free rolls, the Dawes rolls and the Cooper rolls, and some of them are even on the Freedmen rolls, to say that they're Indian, and they are not, but they had to pay $5, which is where you get the $5 Indian. So what we have is from 1868 to today, generations and generations of white people that were practicing or have been practicing our ancient autochthon American Indian Moor spirituality and customs with the dance, the dress, and all of those things. They have been taught to deal with the land, deal with the animals, learn how to hunt, fish, and make things. And these people are fake Indians under the term Native American Indian. They are not the original, the true American Indian. The so-called black people in America are. And the problem is we keep naming ourselves as black, African American. And as a lawyer, I tell people, I say, look, you say you're black or you're African American. I said, okay, let's say I'm French, I can take you to France. I'm Chinese, I can take you to China. I'm Swedish, I can take you to Sweden. I'm Australia, I can take you to Australia. I'm Ethiopian, I can take you to Ethiopia. I'm black. Where the heck is black land? Doesn't exist. Oh, I'm African American. Africa and America are not countries. They are continents. No one has identification from Africa saying they're African. They're either from Angola, Sudan, Ethiopia, Egypt, Mauritania, etc. Their passports say one of those countries. They don't have nothing that says African. They are not called African. They are from their country. Same thing in America. You don't have an ID that says American. You have a state driver's license or state ID that says state of Georgia, state of Iowa, state of North Dakota, state of South Dakota, state of Washington, state of Nevada. Because America is the continent and it's the name of a place. Africa is a continent, it's the name of a place. So if you're going to say you're a name of a place, that means you could be a bathroomian or a kitchenin or a closetian or a backyardian. That's insane. There's no race of people in law. There's no culture. There's no people in law called black or African American, which lends to the abuse of the so-called black people or so-called African American, because you're calling yourself something that doesn't exist, which is why in the 60s, 64 and 65, they knew and they know that you so-called black people and African American are the American, autochthon American Indian, who don't know who you are. So when you were going with the so-called leaders, Thurgood Marshall, Martin Luther King, all of them fighting for your so-called rights, which is not rights. The Constitution nowhere says you have a constitutional right. You don't have a constitutional right because it doesn't exist. I'm going to show you in a minute. Article 4, Section 2 of the Constitution talks about privileges and immunities. That's what we have, constitutional privilege and a constitutional immunity. And Jesse Jackson, right, in the 80s, he's the one that came with the thing, the title or the label African American. There's no race of people called that. All right. So to continue to call yourself Black or African American in the 60s, where you were colored, Negro, and that's why they kept changing your name, because we were ignorant. We don't know law. We don't know where we were, what happened to us. So we were going along with the get along. But the leaders knew. The people that took over our government knew. So in 60s, Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, they said, oh yeah, we want rights. We want rights. Okay, we'll give you 25 years. You give your rights for 25 years, you can vote for every 25 years. You want to be a citizen, 1965, for 25 years, you can be a citizen. And every 25 years, Congress has to revisit it to make you a citizen and allow you to vote. And the reason they're doing that, because you're asking to be in a government that you created. Because you are the people of the United States, and you're in order to form a more perfect union. And then you secure the blessings of our ancestor, our grandmother's mother, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves, the Moors of the United States, and our posterity, us today. And it never went away. It's still there. It's always been there. We just call ourselves something that doesn't exist because we don't know. Now, so what should we call it? Or we are the autochthon, AUTOCHTONON. Autochthon, it means of the land, And so autochthon, American, and even if you don't say autochthon, you can say American Indian Moor. We are American Indian Moors. Not Native American Indian, none of that. So this is part of our problem. This is why the laws don't help us, don't support us, are abusive towards us, because we keep calling ourselves something that doesn't exist. And because we are mentally defective in our brain, this defect causes us, in raising our children, dealing with relationships with men and so-called Black men and women, we're out of balance. We can't get along in our relationships. Our children are out of order. We don't know how to respect each other, women to women. The men are being led to be effeminate, to become soft and feminine, showing their pants, showing their drawers, and all these other different things. All this is connected to this ignorance of law that we're in. We have a veil over our mind. That's why the first podcast, I called it Unveiling the Constitution and the Declaration. And this one is dealing with the American Indian, not the Native American Indian. So, here, we went over the free white person. Naturalization Act. Let me get to I went over these last time. These are pictures in Philadelphia. You see look at his face. That's a black person, the black so-called black man, so-called American Indian Moor, and American Indian Moor woman, and her back and the face like that. That's in Philadelphia. Showed you these last week with these as well. This is in Philadelphia. Another thing I want to show you. This is when I showed you this about the word more and all that stuff. Well, this one thing, because I showed this in the last podcast, but I just want to, since I come to it, I want to show it to you again. The Palace of the Hurons. This was the president and his wife of Panama when I was there in 2009. I met him personally. They give you this book that you're seeing on the screen, and they take you on. You can go on a tour. I was there for business, doing some business with the government of Panama and some clients of mine from America, from South Carolina. And we went on this tour. We saw this. We went through the palace. It's called the palace, like the White House. So we get to the third floor. It says the third floor. And if you look, it says, it is used exclusively as private apartments where the first family joins for relaxation. Noteworthy is the Moorish room, designed by the architect Villanova in the style of the Alhambra and Aranjuez Palace in Spain. There are only 3 Moorish rooms in the world, and this is one of them. This is the room. You see, it's the Moorish room. It's got the 6-point star up in the ceiling, and the 6-point star here. And this is one of the Moorish rooms. So this one is styled after the one in Spain. It just said so. And then this one is in Panama that you're looking at. This is Panama. So where would the third one be? Where would the third one be? The third one is in the United States, in the White House. The third Moorish room is in the White House. Now, in that, and let's see if I get to where I'm trying to get to. Well, and this one right here, this is the $2 bill. And it says United States of America. On the right side and on the left side. The left side is the United States in Congress assembled. And on the right is the United States of America in Congress assembled. The United States in Congress assembled are watching, teaching, and monitoring how the United States of America are following their instruction and organization to set up the government that we wrote and set up for them. So they're picking and meeting how to operate and function within the Constitution. 2 governments. Here, United States, here, United States of America. Let's put it on the $2 bill. See that Indian on there? That's why he's on there, because it was original American, Indian, Moors, etc. And that's a silver certificate. This is a picture of America in this book, and you see that they're carrying a woman off the ship on a lion's paw, and these are 2 Caucasian men, indentured slaves, carrying her off the ship. She's America. There's a closer picture. It says matriarchal nature raised by a lion's paw. If you look, he's Caucasian. And all the American Indian Moors all around, and some conquistadors, and etc. So you so-called black woman, you are the matriarch of the United States, which United States government is a matriarchal. The United States of America is patriarchal. That's why they could not, or could have their women not vote. This is the Black Madonna. This is, again, Nature Knows No Color Line, with pictures of coat of arms. That's Queen Charlotte, who was a noble Moorish queen. But that's not what I'm looking for. All right. Diane Fletcher of the Kiowa Nation. These are Seminole, Moorish Indians, American Indians. That's Dingo L. and Sheikis Carolyn Reynolds L. This was back in the 70s. A parade that they did when the the Prince of Morocco came to America, and he was in DC. They had a parade to celebrate his arrival to America, and they were at the parade, and she was at the parade and hailed and everything, all this stuff. All right, let's see. Yeah, this is what I need to get to. Okay, where are we? Time is. Okay, it's been an hour. All right. Okay. The original Asians are Moors or American Indians. American Indian law, who and where we are in the law. What is an Indian tribe? The Indian tribe is a fundamental unit of Indian law. In its absence, there is no occasion for the law to operate. Yet there is no all-purpose definition of an Indian tribe. See Duke versus Absentee Shawnee. That was this lawsuit. Okay. The Tribe of Oklahoma Housing Authority, a group of Indians may qualify as a tribe for the purpose of one statute or federal program, but fail to qualify for others. Definitions must accordingly be used with extreme caution. At the most general level, a tribe is simply a group of Indians that is recognized as constituting a distinct and historically continuous political entity for at least some governmental purpose. The key problem with this definition lies in the word recognize. Recognized by whom? The answer is that recognition may come from many directions, and the sufficiency of any given recognition is likely to depend upon the purpose of which tribal status is asserted. By far, the most important value recognition is that of the federal government. And in this case, where it says recognition of the federal government, means Congress has recognition or recognizes your tribe. Such recognition binds the state courts. Indeed, unequivocal federal recognition may serve to establish tribal status for every purpose, and the Department of the Interior insists upon federal recognition as a prerequisite for entitlement to many federal Indian services administered by the department. In other words, your tribe, you organize, then you contact the Department of Interior, and they, if you They tell you what procedures and processes you have to go to, what provisions and documents you have to submit to them, because they have a criteria to recognize your tribe. And if your documentations meet the recognition requirement, then you can get federal money to your tribe. That's how that works. And that's the purpose of it. That's what it means. Upon federal recognition as a prerequisite for entitlement to many federal Indian services administered by the department, federal recognition may also arise from treaty, statute, executive or administrative order, or from a course of dealing with the tribe as a political entity. Any of these events or combination of them then signifies the existence of a special relationship between the federal government and the concerned tribe that may confer such important benefits, money, as immunity of the Indians' lands from state taxation. In recognizing a tribe, the federal government has not always been governed by ethnological realities. There are numerous instances where ethnologically distinct tribes or bands were gathered into one common reservation and thereafter treated as a single tribe. The failure of the federal government to recognize a particular group of Indians as a tribe cannot deprive that group of vested treaty rights. The group must have maintained itself as a distinct community, however, with some defining characteristics that permits it to be identified as the group named in the treaty. Similarly, a federally unrecognized tribe that met common law requirements for ethnicity, continuity, leadership, and territoriality has been held to enjoy the same immunity from state law, tort, suit, or as that enjoyed by federally recognized tribes. The action of the federal government in recognition or failing to recognize a tribe has traditionally been held to be a political one, not subject to judicial review. So you can't sue the government because it has nothing to do with judicial laws. It has to only do with politics. So the politics has got to be willing, or the politician has to be willing to accept, acknowledge you, and sign off on your tribe being in existence. And that's how you get your recognition. Although it is still true that the recognition, this doesn't mean that you're not an Indian. When you get your recognition from Congress, all that means is you can get some money now. That doesn't mean that they can't tell you you're not an Indian, because they can't do that. It's like a woman. You walk into a room and say, "Oh no, she's not a woman. That's a horse." It's obvious she's a woman. You can't tell her she's not a woman. You may deny her certain benefits, certain things, but she's still a woman nonetheless. Although it is still true that Congress or the executive can establish standards of recognition without court direction. Federal courts today will review grants or denials of recognition under the Administrative Procedure Act to determine whether the Department of the Interior follows its own regulations and other controlling law and adhere to the requirements of due process. So if you sue them, the courts is going to look at your argument of what you said in your complaint against the Department of Interior, and the court's only going to look at what the rules are for the Department of Interior and what they imparted upon your tribe. Did they follow those rules? If they didn't follow those rules, they're liable. If they did follow rules and you say that they didn't because they did this, the court is not going to grant you any relief because the Department of Interior followed the rules, even if they lie and submit a document signed by someone saying that they did so and checked and this and all that. Once granted, however, the recognition will bind the courts until it is removed by the executive or the Congress. That's the other thing. By asking for recognition to get federal money, the executive, the president, or Congress of the United States can move to remove your recognition where you can't get any more federal money. Not that you're not an Indian. A court may order the executive branch of the federal government to honor tribal status for a particular purpose when that is deemed to have been the intent of Congress. Joint Tribal Council, there may be other substantive limits to the executive power to recognize in extreme instances. The government would not be permitted to confer tribal status arbitrarily on some group that had never displayed the characteristics of a distinctly Indian community. In 1978, the Department of Interior published criteria for the acknowledgement of the status of tribes that were not otherwise federally recognized. The department revised the criteria in 1994. The criteria was designed to achieve eligibility for, again, federal services and other benefits of tribal status for Indian groups that have maintained a substantially continuous tribal existence and which have functioned as an autonomous entities throughout history until the present. And that's the rules 25 CFR. CFR stands for Code of Federal Regulations 83.3. Acknowledgement thus amounts to recognition. A group seeking acknowledgement must, among other things, have been identified as an American Indian entity on a substantially continuous basis since 1900. So acknowledgement and recognition are two separate things. Acknowledgement and recognition are two separate things completely. Right. The Civil Rights Act is an act, like I said, to give you 25 years as being a citizen or a ability to vote. Well, all so-called black people, African American, you're in the wrong government. You're in the United States of America on paper, and on paper you're supposed to be in the United States. Therefore, being in the United States of America on paper, you get no constitutional privilege or immunity, and they have to give you rights every 25 years because you're out of your mind going to somebody else's house that your grandmother created, built for them only, and you have the big house, and you over down there by their house telling them they got to give you rights. So they say, oh, well, okay, well, here's 25 years to vote. Every 25 years you can vote. You got to renew it every 25 years. Here's a right to be a citizen. Every 25 years you got to review it to be a citizen. And that's all because you're calling yourself something that does not exist in law. You so-called black people, so-called black people, African Americans, you are American Indian Moors. That's what you are. That needs to say that on your driver's license, when you fill out your job application, and your home, your license, your trust, your business, all of those things that are personal, that's what it needs to say as your race. But we don't know that, and we don't do that. So we have the difference between acknowledgement and recognition. The group must show that it is a distinct community and exercise political influence or authority over its members, and that it has maintained these characteristics from historical times until the present. Again, 25 CFR Code of Federal Regulations 83.7. The department's decision to acknowledge or deny acknowledgement is subject to administrative review before the Interior Board of Indian Appeals. A group seeking acknowledgement is, as a tribe, must exhaust administrative remedies before seeking relief in federal court. You got to go through your state. You got to sue in the local in the city court. Then you go to the district court. Then you take it to the appeals court of the district court. Then if it doesn't work that way, then you take it to the state Supreme Court. And then if it don't win there, the state Supreme Court, then you go to the state appeal court of the Supreme Court. If you don't go there, then you can go to the federal court. That's exhaustion and remedy. going through all of that. The department's decision to acknowledge or deny, before seeking relief in federal court. The current acknowledgement process is a slow one, with several petitions waiting in line for years. The reason why it's slow is because, like the tribe that I'm a part of, or the chief law counsel for, the Choctaw and She Anu Nations, these two tribes are down in Memphis. We submitted out, did all the paper, everything, followed the requirements, the application process, submitted all of that, sent that in, and we've been waiting. It takes 2 years. But this was before COVID. And when they told us that it would take 2 years, that's the normal process. It takes 2 years, but they are behind, so it would take an additional 2 to 3 years. So then COVID came, and now we're still waiting in limbo, et cetera. So we're still waiting to see, or waiting for that to come. So we apply for acknowledgement, not federal recognition. And acknowledgement, you have to go through the Office of Acknowledgement. For recognition, you go through the Department of Interior. And the two are two separate. Going through the Department of Interior to get a recognition, and they say you granted it and you get it, the Department of Interior gets and appoints a congressman or congresswoman to represent your tribe. So all the monies that come in, the congressman gets first, gets a cut fee, sends it to your tribe, and then you get your money, but they get a cut. That's where Congress appoints a congressman over your tribe. That's not self-autonomous. Under acknowledgement, you submit to the Office of Acknowledgement, then you ought to get the monies directly to your tribal nation from acknowledgement. The Office of Acknowledgement, Department of Interior. Those two separate things, two separate places that you apply to get it. And it's a very interesting process. And this is what I do. Part of what I do, I'm helping people do that. So the other thing is, we're going to stop here. And I'm going to put my contact information. And contact, email, and phone number in the chat so that you can see. And let me go to this here. I'm going to stop here. Look at this picture. All right. This is my contact information. Says National Indigenous Bar Association I'm a member of, and the Tribal Council Lawyer at mail.com, and my phone number. You want to make donations to this podcast? And let's see. I did it too late. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Wait to the very end. However, it's there. And we're going to continue this lecture the next time and keep the information coming, the verification, documentation, to prove and verify the things that I'm saying and I'm showing. And again, the other podcast that I've done, it's called Unveiling the Constitution and Declaration. And put my name in front first of it because what they did, if you just type in Unveiling the Constitution and Declaration, it's not coming up. You got to go to my page. You'll see it to get to that one and this one. So bid you adieu. Until next time, for what we did tonight, today, study, go check it and verify it. And we look forward to seeing you again the next time. Have a good evening.